Master can be very difficult when you're first starting out. And as I've been doing Dungeon Master and running campaigns for a few years now, and even I'm still learning, I thought I would give you some tips to make your journey a little bit easier. So here are 5 tips to help you get started if you're a brand new Dungeon Master.
Riser, double.
I take how much damage? Tip number 1, you do not need all the core books. When you first get started out being a Dungeon Master, it can be very tempting to go after all of these and just start picking up books. Most people will tell you that the only thing you need to get started is actually just these, the 3 core books. I'm going to take that a step further and tell you that the only book you need to get started, assuming I can get it out of here, is this, the Player's Handbook. It doesn't quite, I'll throw a picture up of the basic one. This is a special edition, but this is the only book you need. It's nice to have the monster manual, because the monster manual has stat blocks, but the Dead by Daylight wiki has all the stat blocks for all the monsters that are in this thing, so you do not need to buy this book. The Player's Handbook is great because it gives not only a resource for your players to build their characters, it even has a step-by-step guide on how to build characters from start to finish, but also it helps you because it's got a lot of combat rules in it. You do not need the Dungeon Master's Guide. The Dungeon Master's Guide, out of all my years of DMing, I have cracked open this book maybe about 30 times, 40 if that, in 8 years, and dozens of campaigns. And the only reason I ever go into this book is for the magic items, right? There's a lot of good stuff in here. I'm not saying this isn't a good book, but you definitely don't need it. If you need something to help you with combat rules, I instead suggest picking yourself up a $10 or $15 Dungeon Master screen. Again, this is the one that comes with the special edition, but every Dungeon Master screen has all the rules you could ever want for combat, and it also has things like size charts and status effects and other things like that. It's very simple, very easy to use, and so that's all you need. You can spend about $30 to $40 on a Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master screen, or you can pick up a D&D starter kit. I think they normally run about $30, but you don't even need that because Gregory wanted to be in the video. But you don't even need that because, to tell you the truth, the Dungeon Master screen and the Player's Handbook, you can probably find free PDFs for these kinds of things. So yeah, you don't need a lot of money to get started. All you need to do is pick up the Player's Handbook and use the D&D wiki for literally everything else. Tip number 2, learn to say no, but also to be lenient. I made an entire video on this. It was actually the first Dungeons & Dragons video I ever made. You can check the playlist or the description for the full thing, but to sum it up for you, learn how to say no. You need to be able to set boundaries as a Dungeon Master, and one of the bonus tips that I'll give you for you today is when you're first running a campaign to only stick to these core books. It can be very tempting to like dive in and let your players use Unearthed Arcana and Volos and Xanathars and all of this other stuff, and you know, your players will find some fucking homebrew on the wiki of some slime creature that with a class that fuck all that. Stick with just the core books at first and make sure you keep your players to those books. This is what you're allowed to use it. If you don't like it, tough shit. But also learn to be lenient, right? There are some things that are just not that serious. They're not going to break your campaign. They're not a big deal. And you should be, at least in my opinion, you should be letting those things fly. For example, if you have a player who wants to do an ice mage, but they want to be a sorcerer, you can just reflavor their fire spells to be ice spells and have them do cold damage over fire damage. It's okay. That's not going to shatter your campaign. If you have a paladin who wants to have a pet falcon that he's had since he was a child, and its only purpose is to deliver letters to the party or to his home country or something like that, you don't need to make him take a fucking level in ranger to have the pet falcon. Just let him have the pet falcon. Learn where your boundaries are, but also learn that not everything has to be strict and to the books. Nobody likes a rules lawyer. Don't be a rules lawyer. Tip number 3, run a pre-made. I know it can be very tempting to do a homebrew right off the bat, but take it from somebody who's never run a pre-made. It's really, really hard learning to DM when you don't run a pre-made first. Pre-mades are great. They have guides. They help you understand flow of the story. They help you understand the flow of combat. They help you understand how to set up encounters. And if you need advice on which pre-mades are the best ones, XP to level 3 has a great video breaking down the best ones for in his personal opinion. Me personally, I would recommend Waterdeep, the Tiamat, I forget what it's called, Revenge of the Dragon Queen, I think it's called. It's the Tiamat campaign, or Curse of Strahd. Those are the threes I highly recommend for your first ever trip. And again, just like with the player's handbook, you might not even have to buy it. I'm sure there's a free PDF somewhere on the internet. I would snag it before it gets deleted, but because Wizards is very, very, very quick to delete those free PDFs, and someone always re-uploads them. So get your hands on those while you can. Tip number 4. Fudge your fucking rolls. Look, I am not the type of DM to just let my players live for the sake of living, but if your rolls are going to cut a campaign short and fucking wipe the party, dude, just fake it, man. Like, the DM screen is there for you to fake it so that you can give your players a little leeway, because it is fun for both the DM and the players to be at risk, right? Part of the fun of Dungeons & Dragons is that your character can die. They might die. But if that character dying, or all the characters dying, is going to end your campaign, or it's going to happen like in the first like 2 sessions or something, fudge your dice rolls. I remember I was running this campaign, and part of the campaign was the players in the very early parts were supposed to sneak through the Underdark. That they weren't supposed to fight anybody. I had monsters that they were supposed to run away from. One of the players, for whatever goddamn reason, decided that they were going to shoot a crossbow bolt that cast the move Thunder, which, if you don't know, thunder is really fucking loud. So in their infinite brilliance, they attracted all of the monsters in the cavern. Now, what I should have done was I should have just made all the monsters fail a perception check. But I didn't. Now, what I did do was I took away a lot of the Underdark creatures. I took away a lot so that they wouldn't, I was hoping they wouldn't die. But it was a party full of new players, and none of them knew how to use their abilities. Nobody ever thought to just try to leg it, which is what I was hoping they would do. So it's partially their fault, but it's mostly mine, because I could have saved that, and the campaign ended by session 1. Very, very bad. Very bad. Not fun. Not fun at all. And finally, tip number 5, remember the player's boundaries as well. I talked earlier about you having boundaries when it comes to limitations and saying no so that the players don't go out and try to break your game with a bunch of homebrew shit or even stuff you're not prepared for. But also, you need to understand your player's boundaries. Now, I'm not saying you have to have like consent sheets. I know that's a big controversial topic. I personally don't like mind consent sheets. I don't do them because I choose to have like an open conversation beforehand and be like, hey guys, this campaign might have allusions to slavery or sexual assault or something like that. Are you okay with that? And if my players aren't, then I'll either remove those things from my campaign, because I like to run dark fantasy, but you know, you don't have to do that. You don't even have to have those things to have dark fantasy, right? I'll either remove those things from my campaign, or if the way I like to tell stories and the kind of stories a player likes to experience don't mesh, then we just don't play that campaign, right? Me and that player don't play together. Sometimes players and DMs aren't compatible, and that's okay. Nobody is a dungeon master is not in the wrong for wanting to run a darker atmosphere, and a player is not in the wrong for not wanting to be part of that darker atmosphere. However, when you are newer to the game and you are trying to run campaigns, it is incredibly important that you understand what your players are okay with. One time, I had a player who was an arachnophobe, so I did not put any spider creatures in the campaign. They never had to face spiders because they didn't like spiders. And that's something simple that you can do to make your players more comfortable. If your players are uncomfortable with the way that you tend to have your NPCs act, maybe change it up a little bit. You don't have to completely destroy the integrity of your story, but also understand that while the players are there for the purposes of your fun, you are also there for the purposes of the players' fun. So keep that in mind. And that's all I had for you guys today. Make sure you say bye to Gregory angry in the comments. He was very excited to be part of this video, and I appreciate you all. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next one.